The steel door of the underground vault hissed shut, locking her in a tomb of untraceable millions. Before she could grab the ledger, a cold gun barrel pressed against her temple. "Give me one reason." The city's most ruthless crime lord whispered, "Why I shouldn't paint this floor with you." High in the affluent, heavily wooded hills of Alpine, New Jersey, a zip code synonymous with billionaires' celebrities and secrets, sat the Costello estate. It was a sprawling 22-room fortress, disguised as a limestone chateau overlooking the dark waters of the Hudson River. Beyond the wrought-iron gates and the omnipresent glare of enterprise-grade Genetech security cameras, a miniature empire operated in the shadows. This was the domain of Vincent Costello. Vincent was a man who ruled the East Coast syndicates with the kind of calculated brutality that made seasoned detectives look the other way. At 33, he possessed the sharp, aristocratic features of old money royalty, usually framed by tailored Brioni suits, and the subtle gleam of a platinum Patek Philippe watch. But behind the polished exterior was a predator. He didn't just eliminate his enemies. He dismantled their lives, their businesses, and their legacies until nothing remained. In a house filled with armed guards, ruthless enforcers, and glamorous, calculating women, Hazel Hayes was practically invisible. Hazel was 24, softly contoured, and distinctly out of place in the Costello world of razor-sharp edges. Where Vincent's usual company consisted of statuesque models and hardened mob wives, Hazel was a curvy plus-size maid who wore her black and white uniform a size too large. Her thick mahogany hair was always wrestled into a severe bun, and her gaze was permanently fixed on the polished marble floors. The other staff members, like the head housekeeper Brenda, often dismissed her as a sweet, simple-minded girl whose only redeeming quality was her obsessive attention to detail. She was the chubby maid who never spoke out of turn, never lingered in the hallways, and never ever made eye contact with the men in the tailored suits. That invisibility was Hazel's greatest weapon. Because Hazel was not there to clean. She was there to dismantle Vincent Costello from the inside out. Every day, while she dusted the antique bookshelves in the library or polished the mahogany banisters, her mind was a steel trap cataloguing information. She memorized the patrol routes of the security team. She noted the exact blind spots of the thermal cameras facing the western terrace. More importantly, she studied Vincent. She knew that every Tuesday at 2 a.m., the estate's secondary server initiated a backup, causing a brief 10-second latency in the Brivo electronic door locks. She knew that Vincent took his espresso black that he suffered from insomnia, and that his most prized possessions were not kept in the bank, but in a custom-built Mosler vault buried 3 stories beneath the wine cellar. Hazel had learned to mask her terror with a placid smile, even when she witnessed the true horror of her employer. Just 3 weeks into her employment, she had been polishing the French windows overlooking the rear courtyard when she saw Vincent interrogate a logistical manager named Morgan. Hazel had stood frozen, a microfiber cloth clutched in her trembling hands as she watched Vincent calmly shoot the man in the kneecap for embezzling funds from a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Vincent's expression hadn't changed. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and walked away, leaving his men to clean the blood off the cobblestones. The sight had sent Hazel rushing to the servants' bathroom to vomit her heart hammering against her ribs. But she didn't quit. She couldn't. 3 years ago, her father, a brilliant but naive forensic accountant named William Hayes, had been forced into laundering money for the Costello family. When a federal investigation loomed, Vincent's father, the late Don Costello, needed a scapegoat. William was framed, ruined, and eventually found dead in his jail cell, a staged suicide. But William had left something behind, a digital ledger, a heavily encrypted hard drive containing the routing numbers, offshore accounts, and aliases that held the entirety of the Costello fortune, an estimated $800 million. Without the decryption key, the hard drive was useless. Vincent had the physical drive locked away in his vault. But Hazel, blessed with a photographic memory and trained by her father in complex cryptographic sequences, had the password. It was burned into her mind. Her mission was desperate, but simple: infiltrate the estate, access the vault, and permanently destroy the physical hard drive. Without it, the Costello fortune would be locked in cyberspace forever, paralyzing the syndicate and avenging her father. Her golden opportunity arrived on a crisp Friday in late October. Vincent was hosting a massive charity gala on the ground floor of the estate. The mansion was flooded with politicians, socialites, and corrupt businessmen. The heavy bass of the string quartet echoed through the corridors, and the security team was stretched thin, monitoring the influx of 200 VIP guests. Hazel had orchestrated her shift perfectly. She was assigned to restock the catering supplies in the basement pantry, a room that shared a ventilation corridor with the underground vault. At exactly 11:45 p.m., the estate's network would undergo a scheduled firmware update. It was a vulnerability her brother, a skilled systems architect, had discovered before he went into hiding. For exactly 3 minutes, the biometric scanners on the lower levels would default to their fail-safe mode, requiring only a master RFID keycard instead of a retina scan. Hazel had spent 4 months meticulously cloning the RFID signature from the head of security's badge, bumping into him during the morning coffee rush, and using a hidden scanner in her apron pocket. As the clock struck 11:40 p.m., Hazel slipped out of the pantry. She pulled a dark hoodie over her uniform to blend into the shadows. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She navigated the dimly lit subterranean corridor, her rubber-soled shoes making no sound against the concrete. She reached the heavy steel door of the antechamber. Above it, the red LED light of the biometric scanner blinked steadily. 11:44:50, 11:44:55, 11:45:00. The red light flickered, turning a solid, dull amber. The network was rebooting. Hazel pressed her cloned RFID card against the reader. For a second that felt like an eternity, nothing happened. Then a heavy mechanical clack echoed through the silence. The heavy door unsealed. Hazel pushed it open and slipped inside, descending into the belly of the beast. The air inside the vault room was frigid, smelling faintly of ozone and old paper. The walls were lined with brushed steel safe deposit boxes, but Hazel's eyes bypassed them, locking onto the centerpiece of the room, a standalone glass-encased pedestal. Inside rested a sleek black titanium hard drive, the Aegis drive, the sum total of the Costello Empire's blood money. Hazel approached it, her hands trembling. She bypassed the glass casing, which she knew was deactivated during the firmware update, and reached for the drive. It was cold and heavy in her palm. A profound sense of relief washed over her. It was over. She just needed to smash the casing and submerge the magnetic platters in the vial of highly corrosive acid she had smuggled in her pocket. She pulled the glass vial from her hoodie. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The voice sliced through the silence like a scalpel, deep, resonant, and lethally calm. Hazel froze the vial, hovering inches above the drive. All the blood drained from her face. From the shadows near the entrance, a figure stepped into the dim light. Vincent Costello. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo jacket. His crisp white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, a crystal glass of amber bourbon in his left hand. In his right hand, resting casually against his thigh, was a matte black suppressed 9mm pistol. He had bypassed the network update. Of course he had. A man like Vincent didn't leave his life's blood unguarded, even for 3 minutes. "Turn around, slowly." Vincent commanded his voice, devoid of anger, which made it infinitely more terrifying. Hazel slowly turned to face him, keeping her hands visible. The hard drive was clutched in her left hand, the vial of acid in her right. Her chest heaved with panicked breaths. She felt the sudden, undeniable weight of her own mortality. Vincent tilted his head, his dark, calculating eyes sweeping over her. He looked at her baggy uniform, the messy bun, the soft, round curves she tried so hard to hide. Recognition flickered in his gaze, followed by genuine amusement. "The shy little maid from the second floor," he mused, taking a slow step forward. "I have to admit, you're the last person I expected to find in my vault. I was anticipating a team of heavily armed mercenaries sent by the Russian Bratva. Instead, I get you. What is your name?" "Hazel." She whispered, her voice barely audible. "Hazel," he repeated, tasting the name. He took another step, closing the distance between them. The scent of his Tom Ford cologne and the sharp tang of bourbon enveloped her. "Do you know what happens to people who steal from me, Hazel? I'm not here to steal it," she said, her voice shaking, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "I'm here to destroy it." Vincent paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. He looked at the drive in her hand, then at the small vial of acid. "That drive contains the architectural foundation of my entire organization. If you destroy it, you destroy me. But you also destroy yourself. The moment that acid touches the metal, I will put a bullet through your kneecap. And then we will have a very long, very painful conversation." He raised the gun, pointing it squarely at her chest. "Put the drive on the pedestal." Hazel's grip on the titanium drive tightened. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but a sudden, desperate fire ignited in her belly. She was going to die tonight anyway. But she wouldn't die a victim like her father. "If you shoot me," Hazel said, her voice gaining a sudden, startling clarity, "you will never get your money back." Vincent let out a short, dark laugh. "Sweetheart, I already have the drive. Once I scrape you off the floor, I'll hire the best cryptographers in the world to crack it." "They can't," Hazel countered. "It's an AES 256 military-grade encryption with a dynamic salt sequence. Your father had the top hackers in the dark web try for 3 years. They all failed." Vincent's amusement vanished. His jaw clenched. "How do you know that?" "Because the man who designed the encryption was William Hayes, my father." The silence in the vault grew deafening. Vincent stared at her, the gun unwavering, but the subtle shift in his posture betrayed his shock. He analyzed her face, looking past the chubby cheeks and the terrified demeanor, seeing the intelligence burning in her wide, dark eyes. "William Hayes's daughter." Vincent murmured, his mind working at lightning speed. The report said his family fled the state, that his daughter was a nobody, a baker or something. "I took this job to get close to the drive." Hazel confessed, her heart pounding. "My father left me a letter before your men killed him. He told me what this drive was. He told me it was the only copy. So you came to destroy it, to avenge him." Vincent stepped closer, the gun barrel now inches from her stomach. "A noble, stupid plan. Put the drive down, Hazel. I won't ask again." "No," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "You don't understand, Vincent. I didn't just come to destroy the hardware." She tapped her temple with her index finger. "The password. The dynamic salt sequence. It's not written down anywhere. It was never written down. My father made me memorize it when I was 19. I have a photographic memory." Vincent froze. I came here to destroy the drive. Hazel continued, her breath hitching. So that the only way to access your $800 million is through me. But if I destroy it now, the money is gone forever. She held the vial of acid directly over the drive. If you pull that trigger, my hand spasms. The acid drops, the drive melts, and the password dies in my head. You lose everything. Vincent stared at her. For the first time in his life, the undisputed king of the underworld was caught in a checkmate. He looked at the trembling plus-size maid in the oversized uniform and saw something he hadn't seen in years, an equal. She wasn't a trained assassin. She wasn't a hardened gangster. She was a grieving daughter who had walked into the lion's den armed with nothing but her intellect and a suicidal bluff. Slowly, deliberately, Vincent lowered the gun. He didn't put it away, but the immediate threat of death receded slightly. A slow, dangerous smile crept onto his lips, a smile that made Hazel's blood run cold for entirely different reasons. You orchestrated a network outage, cloned my head of security's badge, bypassed $3 million worth of security, and cornered me in my own vault. Vincent said softly, his voice dripping with dark fascination. All while scrubbing my floors and pretending to be a terrified little mouse. He stepped into her personal space. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. He reached out with his left hand, gently wrapping his large, warm fingers over her trembling hand that held the acid. "You win, Hazel Hayes," he whispered, carefully prying the vial from her grip. "You get to live. But you're not a maid anymore." He took the acid, pocketed it, and then took the hard drive from her other hand, placing it back on the pedestal. He looked down at her, his dark eyes blazing with a possessive intensity that made Hazel's breath catch in her throat. From this moment on, Vincent declared, his voice a velvet threat. "You belong to me. You are the most valuable asset in my empire, and I am going to keep you very, very close until you give me that code." Hazel stared up at the cruel Mafia boss, realizing with a sinking dread that she hadn't escaped the trap. She had just locked herself inside a much smaller, infinitely more dangerous cage, and the way Vincent was looking at her not as an invisible servant, but as a prize, told her that the game had only just begun. By sunrise, Hazel's world had violently shifted on its axis. She was no longer the invisible oversized maid, scrubbing the marble floors of the Costello estate. She was relocated from the cramped, windowless servants' quarters in the basement to the sprawling master guest suite in the East Wing. The room was a masterclass in quiet luxury, outfitted with a custom Heston's mattress, floor-to-ceiling bulletproof windows overlooking the Palisades, and a walk-in closet suddenly stocked with Loro Piana cashmere sweaters, Brunello Cucinelli slacks, and silk Louboutin robes, tailored perfectly to her softer, fuller curves. Vincent Costello did not treat her like a prisoner. He treated her like a queen held hostage. For the first 2 weeks, a relentless psychological war waged between them. Vincent would summon her to his private study, a mahogany-paneled room smelling of expensive Cohiba cigars and old money. He would pour her Macallan, 25-year-old Scotch into baccarat crystal glasses and sit across from her, his dark eyes analyzing every micro-expression on her face. He offered her millions. He offered her a new identity in Geneva. He offered her the deed to a penthouse on Central Park West. Hazel refused it all. She sat in the plush leather chairs, her heart pounding, a frantic rhythm against her ribs, and met his predatory gaze with a stubborn, terrifying resolve. She knew the moment she surrendered the dynamic salt sequence to the Aegis drive, her leverage would vanish. She would be disposable. But Vincent didn't torture her. He didn't lay a violent hand on her. Instead, a strange, toxic fascination began to bloom in the cold, hollow space of his chest. He was captivated by her intellect. During their tense evening meetings, they played verbal chess. Hazel, utilizing her photographic memory, began analyzing his syndicate's logistical weak points just from the documents she casually read upside down on his desk. She pointed out that his shell company Apex Holdings in Delaware was bleeding capital due to a mismanaged supply chain in the port of Newark. Vincent had stared at her for a long, quiet minute, the ice in his eyes melting into genuine admiration. "You are entirely too smart to have been washing my windows, Hazel," he had murmured, leaning across the desk, his voice dropping an octave. "Your father gave you a beautiful, dangerous mind. It's a tragedy you've been hiding it." The proximity of him, the intoxicating scent of Tom Ford, the latent power vibrating off his broad shoulders, made Hazel's breath catch. She hated him. She was supposed to hate him. He was the monster who inherited the empire that destroyed her family. Yet when his large, calloused hand gently brushed a stray lock of mahogany hair behind her ear, a traitorous shiver of electricity rushed down her spine. He was a predator, but he was making her feel seen in a way no one ever had. Not as a chubby girl to be ignored, but as a formidable equal. The illusion of their isolated war was shattered on a rainy Tuesday evening. Vincent had brought her down to the private dining room. The table was set with fine bone china and a spread of osso buco prepared by his personal chef, but the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. Standing in the corner of the room, flanked by 2 armed guards, holding Heckler and Coke MP5 submachine guns, was a bruised and bloodied man. It was Paulie, one of Vincent's senior lieutenants. Hazel froze in the doorway, her stomach dropping. "Sit down, Hazel," Vincent commanded, softly pulling out a chair for her. He wore a tailored charcoal Brioni suit, looking like a dark prince of the underworld. Reluctantly, she sat, her hands trembling in her lap. "Paulie here has been making unauthorized withdrawals from our secondary accounts," Vincent said, slicing into his veal with surgical precision. "But more importantly, Paulie has been speaking with Lorenzo Falcone, the head of the Falcone crime family in Brooklyn." Paulie sobbed, dropping to his knees. "Boss, please," Falcone approached me. "He said he knew about the drive. He knows about the girl." Hazel's blood ran cold. The Falcone family was the most brutal syndicate on the eastern seaboard, notorious for human trafficking and extortion. If they knew about her, she was a walking target. "I know he does," Vincent replied, his tone conversational. He took a sip of a dark Barolo wine. "Because you told him Paulie. You told Lorenzo that the daughter of William Hayes is sitting in my house with the keys to my kingdom locked inside her pretty head." Vincent set his glass down. He didn't yell. He didn't pull a weapon. He simply nodded at the guard on the left. The guard stepped forward and drove the butt of his rifle into the back of Paulie's skull. The lieutenant collapsed to the Persian rug, unconscious. "Take him to the Pine Barrens," Vincent ordered flatly. "Ensure he doesn't make the return trip." As the guards dragged the body away, Hazel stared at her plate, nausea roiling in her stomach. Vincent wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and reached across the table, his warm fingers wrapping over her trembling hands. "I didn't show you this to frighten you," Vincent said, his voice unusually gentle, tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I showed you this because the game has changed. Falcone will come for you. He won't negotiate, and he won't be gentle. You think you are my prisoner, Hazel. Out there you are dead meat. In here, under my protection, you are untouchable. But I cannot protect a kingdom that is paralyzed. I need that code." Hazel looked up into his dark, intense eyes. For the first time, she saw a flicker of genuine vulnerability in the Mafia boss. He wasn't just trying to secure his wealth, he was trying to fortify his walls to keep her safe. The realization twisted a knot in her chest, blurring the lines between her captor and her protector. "I need time," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Vincent's gaze softened. He brought her knuckles to his lips, pressing a warm, lingering kiss against her skin that sent a jolt of fire straight to her core. "Take all the time you need, Maya Regina. But do not wait until the wolves are at the door." The wolves did not knock. They blew the door off its hinges. It happened 3 nights later during a torrential downpour that masked the sound of the approaching Sikorsky S-76 helicopter. Hazel was asleep in her suite when the deafening boom of C4 explosives shattered the tranquility of the estate. The eastern gate had been breached. The emergency sirens wailed a high-pitched scream that cut through the darkness. Hazel bolted upright, her heart hammering wildly. Before she could swing her legs out of bed, the heavy oak door of her bedroom kicked open. Vincent stood in the doorway clad in tactical black gear, a Kevlar vest strapped tightly across his chest, and a customized Glock 19 in his hand. His face was a mask of lethal, focused fury. "Get up! Shoes on! Now!" He barked, crossing the room in 3 massive strides. He grabbed a heavy ballistic jacket from the closet and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. "Is it Falcone?" Hazel gasped, slipping her feet into sneakers. "He sent a hit squad, 30 men, heavily armed," Vincent said, grabbing her hand and pulling her into the hallway. "They bypassed the perimeter sensors. Someone on my inner circle sold us out." Gunfire erupted from the grand staircase, below the sharp staccato pops of assault rifles echoing off the marble walls. The estate was a war zone. Vincent pulled Hazel down a hidden servants' corridor, bypassing the main halls. His grip on her hand was iron tight, his body constantly shifting to shield hers from exposed angles. "The vault!" Hazel panted as they rushed down the narrow spiral staircase into the subterranean levels. "They're going for the hard drive." "Forget the drive," Vincent snapped, firing 2 quick shots into the shadows as a Falcone mercenary rounded the corner, dropping the man instantly. "I don't give a damn about the money right now. I am getting you to the panic room." Hazel stumbled, shock freezing her in place. "What, Vincent? That's $800 million. That's your entire legacy." Vincent grabbed her by the shoulders, pressing her against the cold stone wall of the basement as boots thundered on the floorboards above them. His face was inches from hers, smeared with soot, his eyes burning with an intensity that stole the oxygen from her lungs. "I don't care about the money, Hazel," he roared over the gunfire. "I care about you. The Empire can burn to ash for all I care, as long as you walk out of here breathing. Do you understand me?" In the dim emergency lighting, Hazel stared at the ruthless, cruel Mafia boss. The monster she had sworn to destroy was willing to throw away his father's entire fortune just to keep her safe. The walls she had built around her heart shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. "Vincent," she breathed, tears welling in her eyes. "Listen to me," he said, his voice urgent, pulling a folded document from his tactical vest. He shoved it into her hands. "If we get separated, there is a tunnel behind the wine cellar. Take it. It leads to a safe house in the Palisades. Read this when you are safe." Hazel looked at the paper. It was an internal Falcone syndicate dossier. Her eyes scanned the text, her photographic memory instantly processing the names and dates. It was an assassination order, dated 3 years ago. The target, William Hayes. The signature at the bottom, Lorenzo Falcone. "My father didn't order the hit on your dad, Hazel," Vincent said softly, his thumbs wiping a tear from her cheek. My father was a monster. Yes, but he needed William alive to launder the money. Lorenzo Falcone ordered the hit to frame my family and steal the encryption. I've spent the last 3 years trying to dismantle Falcone's operation, to avenge my father, and to avenge yours. The revelation hit Hazel like a freight train. The entire foundation of her revenge was a lie. The man she thought was her enemy was the only one fighting the true villain. A heavy explosion shook the foundation of the house. Dust rained down from the ceiling. They were breaching the vault room. Vincent checked his magazine, his jaw set. "Get to the panic room. I'm going to hold them off." He turned to leave, but Hazel grabbed his tactical vest, pulling him back with a surprising, desperate strength. She wasn't the invisible Chubby Maid anymore. She was the daughter of a genius and the partner of a king. "No," Hazel said, her voice steady, her dark eyes blazing with a fierce, unbreakable fire. "We are not running, and we are not letting Falcone take that drive." Vincent stared at her, stunned. "Hazel, we are outgunned." "Not if you have your full resources," she fired back. She grabbed his radio from his shoulder. "The decryption salt sequence is dynamic. The base code is Alpha 7 Tango Niner Bravo. The rotating cipher is the Fibonacci sequence applied to the date of my father's death." Vincent's breath hitched. She was giving him the keys to the kingdom. "Call your offshore brokers," Hazel commanded, her soft face hardened into the visage of a Mafia queen. "Liquidate $50 million instantly. Put a bounty on every Falcone mercenary in this house. Text it to the dark web tactical channels. In 10 minutes, every freelance gun in New Jersey will be hunting them for sport." A slow, wicked, impossibly proud smile spread across Vincent's face. He pulled her against his chest, crashing his lips onto hers in a searing, desperate kiss that tasted of gunpowder rain and absolute loyalty. She kissed him back, anchoring her hands in his hair, surrendering completely to the beautiful, dangerous monster she had fallen in love with. When he pulled away, his eyes were lethal. "Alpha 7 Tango Niner Bravo," he repeated, tapping his radio earpiece. "Consider it done, my queen. Let's go watch them burn." Hand in hand, the boss and his queen walked into the shadows, ready to reclaim their throne. Did you expect that explosive twist? Hazel went from an invisible, underestimated maid seeking revenge to the brilliant queen of a dark empire. If you loved this intense Mafia romance, the psychological warfare, and that gripping plot twist, hit the like button. Right now, share this video with your friends who love high-stakes drama, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next thrilling, true crime-inspired story. What would you do in Hazel's shoes? Comment below.